There is a girl living in Chicago. I met her many years ago. And before she had ever met me, she was coming with her parents to attend a meeting. And on the way, she pictured what I look like. And she pictured I must have a white beard. So when she arrived and saw me, the face was the same, but she pictured, but the beard was missing. And first thing she asked me is, "Where's your beard?" Then after the meeting, she thought she has come to go away with me, that I had come to take her. I said, there's a time. I will take you one day, but there's a time for everything. So wait for your time and you will go. Great Master authorized me to initiate for the first time in this country and said that girl will be the first exception. And because we couldn't find a river, we went to the Lake Michigan. And the bank of the Lake Michigan, she got initiated. Very unique thing. And she remembered, even before initiation, but immediately after initiation, that she had been with Great Master in a past life. She remembered her past life. And I began to suspect that maybe she could be the same lady I knew, who spent a lot of time in the Dera and lived in a house near our house. And actually, the last part of her life, she lived in our house and died there. I said, it's possible, but I don't know. One can't be sure, Sometimes you get this feeling of having been at a place and get a deja vu feeling, and it may be right or not. But the lady who died knew my mother very well. Also, my two younger sisters, they had been invited by that old lady before she died to a hill station in India, in Shimla, to come and spend a week with her. When they arrived at her house, that old lady said, "Would you like to have some tea and some cookies, biscuits or cookies they call them?" And she said, "Okay." So she opened a packet. That old lady opened up a packet of cookies. Those were those, long cookies with cream in them, like cream wafers. And they were those long cookies. She opened and took out a little plate and began to put those cookies in an order like a sunshine. And these girls, my sisters, wondered, when we are going to eat them up, why is she decorating the plate in that way? They were a little surprised, but they kept quiet. They had tea and had that cookies. Now when this little girl came up, she expressed curiosity to go back to India, go and see the Dera, go and see all those places. Along with a bodyguard, a black guy, big one. I said, we should take a bodyguard. And who I worked with here, we went to India. And went to our house. And there, I said, this is a little girl a teenage girl from United States. And I brought her because she feels that she has been in India before and she says some things which I can't verify. So they said, "Will you have some tea?" And she said, "Yes." And they opened up a box of similar type of cookies and put them on the plate. This girl, without any knowledge of what happened in the past, began to arrange them exactly in that order. That was enough proof for my sisters. It's the same woman. Because they said nobody knew this except her. Then I took her to my mother, because my mother was a very friendly person. And my mother took her hand and she said, "She's the same Bibi that I knew." And she was so fond of her, began to talk like good old days. "Do you remember we used to meditate in that hut there in the Dera? She said, yes, I remember everything. So it was such a remarkable experience. And I was a favorite son of my mother, and whenever I went to India, she would call me, forget everybody, I just want Ishwar to be near me. And that day, when she called somebody, I ran. She said, not you. I wanted BB to come. First time I was placed in second position. So I discovered that that BB was really an advanced soul. And she had moved over to this country exactly on the basis of what Great Master said, that the axis of spirituality is going to move from India, from the east to the west. Not only will it move to the west, it will go and become big and localize itself in a big way in the United States of America. He told this to Julian Johnson, an American disciple of his. He wrote several letters. So I was surprised that this event took place. My sisters were convinced, my mother was convinced, and I was little doubt. How can she be the same person? Till she said to me, don't do this, otherwise I'll spank you. I said, she's the same BB. And I said, look at the advantage this girl has over so many people who try to get immigration, including myself. I had to go to the American embassy to come to this country and get citizenship here. And this woman, just by reincarnation, flew into this country without any visa problem. Of course, later on I found out that many of the friends I meet here have been in India. Not only in India, they've been at the Dera. And many are old disciples of Great Master. When they get initiated, they tell me in private interviews, how come when we meditate, we see Great Master also there? I said, yes, you were with Great Master earlier. So many people who were disciples of a Great Master in India are today here, carrying out that prediction of the Great Master, that this country is going to be really a spiritual country. Not only that, that the Eastern countries, where many mystics have come, many philosophers have come, like India and China, they will become involved so much in material things, they'll just go after industrial production, economic growth, and forget about spirituality. And this country, which has had enough of industry and has enough of affluence and money, will find out that money has not solved any problem and will turn to spirituality in a big way. I knew this prediction of Great Master, so I took a ringside seat. I came here mainly for this reason. Why did I migrate to this country? To take a ringside seat to see the show here. And the show has started. Mark has been now putting up some of these lectures, talks on YouTube. So, a cousin of mine who is a journalist in Delhi, in India, he wrote to me that after 30, 40 years, he had not been in contact with me. He saw me on YouTube and he wrote an email to me that he said, long ago, Great Master wrote to an American disciple that America is going to be the home of great spirituality. I have seen you on YouTube and it appears that you are part of the process. I wrote to him that not only he wrote to American disciples, he also mentioned to Dr. Johnson in my presence that America will be a great country for spirituality. On the day I received his email, I got an email from David sending me a copy of a letter written by Great Master in July 1937 saying the same thing. And neither he knows that I got the other email on the same day. That these coincidences are remarkable. These coincidences have always affected me. How can such a coincidence take place? What do these coincidences mean? I discovered that when one comes on the spiritual path, the number of such coincidences increases in one's life. That we begin to notice more and more, how could this happen at the same time? How come I opened a page of a book, it gave an answer to a question I had this morning? How come I'm driving my car on the way and there is a hoarding, a board on the road dealing with an ad, nothing to do with spirituality, but one line in that is answering my question of the morning or of yesterday. How do these things happen? So when we look at these things, we understand that coincidences, coincidental happenings are not accidental. There is something more in them. And I had to study it. What is the connection between spirituality and coincidence? I discovered that although we acknowledge that the soul of a human being is responsible for the intuitive power, the intuition, the gut feeling, the gut knowledge that one gets instantaneously, the coincidence complements the same knowledge. That when you have some hunch, this is going to happen, you go, the next coincidence that happens confirms the same thing. I found that whereas intuition is an internal knowledge, coincidence is a verification externally, outside. So internally and externally, do not think they are so far apart. Some people think that outside is all terrible, we have to go inside. That is what the masters are saying. That's what Ishwar also said last time. Go within, outside is all attachment and all that. That's not really true. The truth is that whatever is inside is also outside. That the outside is a projection from the inside. What is happening inside us is also our experience outside in this world. And that's why outside coincidences are corresponding to our own spiritual growth inside. So when you find a number of wonderful coincidences happenings taking place outside, how you meet certain people suddenly, how you come across a book suddenly, how you do these things all of a sudden without knowing how it has happened, it corresponds also to the same thing happening inside you in terms of spiritual awakening. So that is why that means there is a language being spoken to us which is more than the language of the mind. It's more than our mental thinking. And that comes suddenly and has no relevance to our mental thinking, but gives us instantaneous good knowledge that comes through intuition and circumstances and coincidences. There was a mystic whose name is even known in this country, Rumi, Maulana Rum, Jalaluddin Rumi. He wrote certain poetry called Masnavis, and in one of the poems he says, people tell me it is good to live in the will of God. Isn't everything the will of God? Isn't everything that is happening the will of God? What other will is there? Well, okay, let us say there is a mind's individual will. We have an individual will operated by our mind, and then there is God's will. Assuming there are two wills. Of course, you can't have individual will if God doesn't will that you should have an individual will. But let's say there are two things, that there is your mind's will and there is God's will. How do you determine what is God's will? You can always say, well, I'm going to speak to God. God, I want to do this thing. Is it your will? Answer says, yes. Isn't that not the mind also? The both are mind's will. How do you find out what is God's will? And he gives an answer in that poem. Rumi says, if a spade has been placed in your hand, God has expressed his will, dig. If a pen has been placed in your hand, God has expressed his will, write. If a circumstance has been created around you, not by your mind, it's been created by circumstances and coincidences, God has expressed his will, and follow it. Now you will notice that these coincidences as an expression of God's will correspond to our intuition also. So intuition and circumstance are a good indication. Some people call them clues. I know my friend Huey calls it a clue. He says, I know a clue what to do. The clue is when I get a hunch and I also see a circumstance outside corresponding to that, I've got a clue what I'm supposed to do. If one wants to lead a life, a spiritual life, that's the best way to do it. Look up with your gut feeling what's there. See if a coincidence outside corroborates it, confirms it. Do it. Don't wait for the mind to comment upon it and say, maybe it's good, maybe it's bad, maybe I should do it, maybe it's not. Make the mind do it. You will notice the whole life changes. Now what we are doing is we use the mind to make decisions. Every decision we make with the mind and then we regret it. And then we are feeling guilty about it. Why are we having guilt and regrets all the time? Because we are relying on the wrong thing for making decisions. If we make our decisions intuitively and check them out with what has happened as a coincidence outside, you will find that you are following the right track and you will have no regrets. Because when you use your mind to make a decision, you use a process called logic. If you study the philosophy of logic, you will find logic is of two kinds. One is deductive logic and one is inductive logic. Deductive logic says, if you know this wall is yellow painted and that's a portion of the wall, that must also be yellow. That's deductive knowledge. You deduce from a large premise given to you a small section of it and come to a conclusion. It does not add to any new knowledge. It just gives you a confirmation of part of the knowledge which starts with the premise. Deductive knowledge has never added to real knowledge. It's just a way of rationalizing things. On the other hand, inductive knowledge says, if this wall goes around and is all yellow, probably on the other side also it's yellow. Inductive logic always have maybes and probabilities in it. It follows the law of probability. Therefore, it's never certain. What kind of logic is it? Either it gives no knowledge if it is deductive, or it leads to a doubtful knowledge if it is inductive. Does it give any other knowledge? Logic has never given anything. There was a great writer at Harvard University, Charles Pierce Sanders. He wrote a number of volumes on philosophy. One of the books was Exact Logic. I studied that book. And exact logic, he says, exact logic is not logic at all. Exact logic is intuition. When you intuitively know something, that's exact knowledge. Why? Because whereas logic depends on the premise you feed into it, logic depends on the data you give to it, and then come to a conclusion. Intuition depends on all the previous impressions you have had since the birth of your DNA molecule. Intuition is not based on any new information you put into your head. Intuition is a gut feeling coming from your total experience. Even the biologists have now realized that intuitive powers come from the DNA molecule, and that has carried the memories of all your previous lives also in every kind of species through the Darwinian table of progression. So therefore, intuition is something very different. It picks on your total knowledge. But you don't know it because you don't remember any of those things. That's why it looks like a hunch, looks like just a gut feeling. But it's not really a gut feeling. It's an assembly of knowledge over a vast period of time, way before you were born. And that all gets out in the form of a gut feeling or a knowledge. But do not try to create gut feelings. Some people say, oh, I know how to use intuition. I said, explain to me how. He said, for example, I want to decide whether I should talk to David now or not. Okay? Now, I am going to use my intuition. Yes, I will talk. I said, the destroyed the intuition. It took time. That's your mind working. Intuition never has any time. It just comes. And the moment you said, you are working with the mind. That is not intuition. So you should know what true intuition is. It comes like a flash, comes with no prior knowledge. It sometimes contradicts what the reason is saying. The mind is saying do things and the gut feeling says no, do something else. It's not always consistent with the mind's reasoning. And therefore, intuition is the real source of our knowledge and which we can use. Now, if you are on a spiritual path and if you meditate regularly, your intuitive power increases. It increases to a point where you can get a feeling, gut feeling for every decision you make in life. What a great life that would be. You have no doubt left in your mind. All the doubts are created when you make your decisions with your mind. Therefore, it's a very big change of life if you begin to live with your intuitive knowledge rather than with your mental knowledge. So the mind can create difficulties because of lack of data. Today, you are given a certain amount of data, you make a decision. Tomorrow, you are told something was not known to you. Decision changes. Nobody can at any time know everything to make a good decision. That's why new facts come in and our decisions are wrong. Why depend upon that undependable source of collecting partial information and making decisions and then remaining in doubt whether I did the right thing or not? And of course, this is a good way to approach life. Use intuition for decision making. Use the mind. It's a very valuable thing. Use the mind. Direct it to carry out what your intuition says do. Don't let the mind flounder your decisions and say, oh, let me have a second thought, let me think further about it. When you start thinking further about it, you often make mistakes and you move away. So many people have told me, we had a good feeling to do this and we thought maybe not, maybe we are not sure, and we made a mistake. That the good feeling in the beginning was the right feeling. It came instantaneously. The other important factor is that not making a decision is not a good decision ever. Sometimes we want to postpone everything. I worked with a politician once. In my career in the government in India, I was working as a secretary to a politician. He was a very great politician, very successful. He raised the status of the state in which he worked and where I worked to the top level in the country. And that politician and I, we were returning from a meeting in the capital, in New Delhi, on the way back to our state capital. At night in the car was running at a high speed. On an Indian road to run at 70 miles an hour is very high speed. And there were little dogs, cats coming in the way, and one rabbit got killed. Now, I was very sleepy, but that politician sitting next to me, he was very wide awake. He said, Mr. Puri, did you see a rabbit got killed? I said, yes, the driver is running so fast. The car is running so fast, naturally an animal can get killed. He says, no, watch carefully. Look at all the rats running across the street. You can see them in the light. They are running, hopping like this, you can see them, and they are all crossing the street, no one is getting killed. A rabbit is a faster animal than a rat. And how could the rabbit get killed? Would have just crossed the street. You didn't watch carefully. Give me a correct answer, why did the rabbit get killed? I said, I think his karma was bad. He said, I thought you'll give me an administrative answer. You're giving a religious answer to me. I said, all right, you give me a political answer. You're a politician. He said, you did not watch carefully. Unlike the rats who hopped over the road and crossed when they saw the light of the car, and the other did not cross because they saw the light of the car. This rabbit came in the middle of the road, saw the light, and decided to go back. He turned around, and once he turned around, he could have gone back. He again changed his mind, and he tried to go again across the street, got killed. The rabbit got killed by indecision. So do men get killed by indecision. So do families get killed by indecision. So do nations get killed by indecision. Indecision is a bad decision no matter what. A bad decision is better than indecision. Because if you make a bad decision, you can find out it is bad and correct it. Do something about it. If you don't make any decision, that's always a bad decision. Now, what makes us indecisive is too much thinking with the mind. We employ the mind to be indecisive instead of being decisive. Whereas intuitive life, it quickly decides. Just go with the gut feeling and go ahead. If something doesn't work, change it. So, the best mantra I ever heard is a 2-word mantra. It's a very good spiritual and physical mantra. 2 words only in English. It says, so what? Whatever happens, you can say, so what? There's always a cure for everything. There's always a remedy for everything. You can always reverse most of the things that happen. We worry unnecessarily. There was another philosopher from India who came to this country, lived in California for a long time and wrote many books. And his name was Dr. Tind. And Dr. Tind, I have met many of his disciples over here. Dr. Tind came to India and he gave a lecture. And the words I remembered the most and which I liked so much was, he said, when a problem comes into your life, never postpone dealing with it. Never run away from it. Deal with it squarely on the face. When a problem comes in front, meet it, greet it, and beat it. 3 simple words. Don't skirt around it. Meet it, greet it, come on problem, I'm ready for you, and beat it. Right there. Postponing does not take away the problem. It only adds to the problem by making you wait for it and not knowing what to do, indecisiveness. So that is why this change of life that I am recommending, that you use your gut feeling more, use the intuitions that come around you more, they help you in every way. So they make your life much easier. And these maybes and perhapses disappear. That a person who is always talking of, maybe this will happen, yes, it will happen like that. You know, when you go to a class, a professor teaches like that. A professor of philosophy said, maybe this could have happened, perhaps that is the correct answer. Have you ever seen a perfect living master talking like that? There are no maybes and perhapses in the language of a perfect living master. He talks with certainty. He talks with knowledge directly obtained intuitively within himself. He has no maybes and perhapses in his discourse. And that is because he's dealing direct with knowledge and not speculation. The mind speculates. Intuition gives us knowledge. Intuition does not arise from the mind. Intuition arises from the soul. Intuition is one of the functions of the soul. Love is one of the functions of the soul. Bliss and joy which we see is one of the functions of the soul. Beauty that we see around us is a function of the soul. These are not functions of the mind. To rationalize, to analyze, to think deeply about it, to go into doubts and fears about things. These are functions of the mind. So they are 2 different functions. Spiritual people live with their spirit and not so much with the mind. They use their mind to carry out what the spirit says. So this is all, we put the cart before the horse by putting the mind ahead of the spirit. And that leads to a lot of our problems. One of the biggest problems I've noticed amongst people is they carry guilt for the mistakes they make. If you carry guilt, does it solve anything? It just makes you feel bad, makes you feel worse. The longer you hold on guilt for anything, how does it matter if you made a mistake, apologize, correct it, get punished, get over it, move on? What's the idea of carrying guilt forever? People carry guilt right up to the grave. People carry guilt into their next lives. People create a new life for themselves because of guilt. Guilt is created by an overuse of the mind. And that's why another problem comes up because of guilt. There's no idea of guilt. There are 4 principles of Indian spirituality I read somewhere and I want to share them with you. Some of you have heard them before. The first principle is that when you meet somebody in life, every person you meet, there is a purpose in that. Either you learn something, you teach them something, you exchange something, you settle an old debt with them, but there's some purpose in meeting every person in life. Second is that whatever event has to happen will happen. No matter how hard you try and say, I'll stop it, I'll not let this happen. You can try hard, it still happens. Third principle is that the time for everything to begin is fixed. And you can be impatient. I am very impatient. When will this happen? When will this happen? It will happen at the right time. You can't help it. But the fourth principle is the one that appeals to me the most. It says, what is over is over. Don't keep it in your mind. Don't live in the past. What has happened is over. Now look at the future. So many people waste their life constantly regretting about the past, constantly living in the past. They should move on, forget the past, and move on. So these are some of the hindrances that have come into our life, which are man-made, created by our own minds. And we can easily avoid all of them by living a spiritual life. So spiritual life is not merely to discover any heavens inside us. Spiritual life changes our life right here outside too, and makes us enjoy life for which we came. As I said yesterday, this life should be treated like an adventure. You come for adventure, to see it, and not to carry all these negative things around you. Many of you might have read the book called The Secret. The Secret says there's a law of attraction that operates. And if you have negative thoughts, negative things will come to you. If you have positive thoughts, positive things come to you. And people have tried, and it's a very well-published book. It has sold so many million copies. The movie was made of it, and people have tested out. But it has a catch in it. When it says, whatever positive thing you want, you'll get it. But then it says, but you should never have doubt about it. You should not feel, maybe I'll get it or maybe not. Then you don't get it. This maybe that comes up in the middle, that doesn't allow the secret to work. The secret works if only we are confident, and not only we should say something will happen in the future. It has already happened. We are only about to get it. It will happen. Now, Tiki sings that song, one of the Indian scriptures, Jo Mange. So Jo Mange's song also says the same thing. Whatever you want, the Lord will give you. Whatever you ask for, Lord will give you. There again, the caveat is the same, that if you ask with a doubt, you are not even asking. You are not even sure. If you are not sure, the Lord says, okay, have a long rope. When you are certain, come back to me again. So I have noticed that Lord is he has a very long rope in his hands. When he gives us a chance, he says, go ahead, have a long rope. So we don't understand that when we are getting chance after chance, it is only because our mind is asking for it. And we are dumb people that way. We should be certain what we want to ask from the Lord. Be confident about it, we'll get it. In this country, they say that all the blondes are dumb. I don't believe it. Do you believe that all blondes are dumb in this country? I hear it all the time. But I read somewhere that a man wanted to prove that all blondes are not dumb. So he held a conference of all the blondes. He collected 100 blondes in a big hall. And he said, I'll prove to you that all blondes are not dumb. So he said, any volunteer? And one girl raised her hand. He said, come on the stage. She went on the stage. He said, I'll ask you a simple question. What is 20 plus 30? She said, 25. And he felt sorry, but he said, should we give her another chance? They all said, give her another chance. So he said, okay, I'll ask you a simpler question. What is 10 plus 5? She said, 12. Everybody said, give her another chance. Then he said, tell me what is 2 plus 2? She said, 4. Everybody said, give her another chance. It's just a joke, okay? I am very happy that David has invited me here to meet all of you and to share these views and jokes with you, so that we know that it's good to laugh. Laughter is the best medicine. I've always recommended to people to use their eighth sense. Some people have never heard of eight senses. How many of you have never heard we have 8 senses? Okay. How many have heard that we have 5 senses? All. 6? Some of you. Okay, 5 senses everybody knows. They are the senses of perception, seeing, touching, tasting, smelling. Those are all 5 senses known to us. 6th sense is the intuitive sense. And they say women have 6th sense. I think everybody has 6th sense. We don't use it. 6th sense is the gut feeling that we get. Seventh sense is even more important than these six. It's called common sense. It's very uncommon. Common sense is the sense which tells us the difference between the chaff and the grain. It tells us what is important, what is not. It tells us how to lay our priorities in life. And very often we spend so much time on trivial things and forget the more important things. That's lack of common sense. So common sense should be used to prioritize our life. To say what's important, let's give time to the more important things. We have limited time. We cannot do everything. Nobody can do everything. Let us pick up what is important, what is not. Prioritize it. Common sense enables us to do that. But the best sense is the eighth sense of humor, the ability to laugh. The ability to laugh not at people, but laugh at yourself. Laugh at any situation and use the big mantra. Laugh it out and say, so what? So that's why use all the eight senses and the big mantra. These are very helpful in life. All these tips I give, I have employed them myself. It has worked for me. I am sure they'll work for you also. So people ask me, what is the secret of my happiness? How can I always be happy? I said, the mantra. So what? So if you have any questions, I'll be very happy to answer. Yes. It's all activity of the mind. Yes, because possibility does not say certainty. Certainty is a function of the soul. Possibility is a function of the mind.
How about dreams or like vision mapping?
There are two kinds of dreams, and then I'll talk about vision and goal also. The dreams are sometimes a continuation of problems that we carry with us and go to sleep and carry them. Those dreams, you will notice, are mostly monocolor. They are in buff color, skin color, and ranges of the red spectrum. Those dreams do not have any blue or yellow in them. Then they are very vivid dreams, which you sometimes get. Those have those blue and yellow colors. You can recognize them. They are so vivid and so clear. They are lucid dreams. And some of them reveal something that's going to happen. They give you knowledge. So the two dreams are different kind. So far as goal setting is concerned, yes, setting a goal is good, provided you can set it not with a possible goal, a certain goal. I have conducted business courses on this, how to set goals. And the goal is set like this. Think where you will be 10 years from now. Not, it's possible I'll go into this career, I'll do this. That's not a goal. You are sitting in a particular workplace, in a particular office. You can see yourself there. You can see who else is around, what's happening 10 years from now. Then work backwards. To reach that, where will I be? 7 years, 5 years, next year. That's a good goal setting. That is very certain. If you do that, you achieve that. A guy came from this country and taught us a system called EST. Have you heard of EST? Erhard, his name was Erhard. Erhard Seminar Training, EST. And EST in French is A, which means is. What is. He told us that we should live with this philosophy that what is. What ought to be is a mental game. What might be is a mental game. What is. So he gave us a book and said, if you write on it what you will be getting in your life, it will come to pass, provided you have no doubt about it. Same thing that I was talking. I wrote whole pages, everything has happened exactly as I wrote. And I know this can happen to anybody because goal setting with certainty is very different from just thinking of possibilities. The goal should be set so clearly. Not that you say, now I am going to take up this course, now I am going to do this work, now that will be my career change. No, this is babies and perhaps is a very clear goal set way ahead, 10 years, decade ahead, and then you approach backwards and say what you do tomorrow for that goal, which is 10 years, it works. Right? Any other question? Everybody satisfied, David? Yeah, either no questions or all that I said went over the head. Yes, there's one question.
From last night, I wish you could talk more about free will and just...
Okay, I'll spend a little time on the subject before we meditate. This is a very much debated subject of free will. Do we have free will or no? I demonstrated to you yesterday with that friend of mine. I gave him a cup of coffee and tea and demonstrated not only we have free will, we are trapped in free will. You can't even escape from it. Free will is so real that whether you like it or not, you have free will. No decision can be made without free will. You are accosted with choices and options every moment of life. How do you go with them? How do you choose with free will? So free will is a live, actual, dynamic experience we are all having. Having said that, the second question is, how does it work? How does it operate? Now, when you come to how free will operates, then you find that the circumstances in our head, the genetic code that is directing us, and the way our mind chooses things, when it makes a choice, those factors which allow us to make a choice are totally fixed when we make a choice. Therefore, there is no real option. We think we made a choice freely. How do you make a free choice? You make a choice by certain things in your mind which says this is better than that. We have our judgments, our values on that. We apply those values and we make a free choice, free will. Now, when you look at those values and those factors of choice, you will find at any time we make a choice, those factors are either hereditary or environmental. There is no third source for those factors. If all factors that make us make a free will choice are already fixed in environment, at that moment when you make a choice, you cannot change the environment you have been through. You cannot change the hereditary genes you are carrying. Therefore, actual fact is that you are making a choice strictly on something that's already predetermined. So there is no real free will. It looks free. Why does it look free? Because you are unaware of those factors of choice. Supposing you came to know what are those factors of choice, hereditary and environmental, that you are carrying with you, you will notice you have no choice at all. The so-called experience of free will is arising from circumstances which give you no option but to make that choice. It looks free. Okay, that's one way of looking at it. The second way of looking at it is that if destiny is predetermined and already written up, why do we then have to go through an experience where we have to make choices at all? That's the second question, that if destiny is already fixed, why do we make question? That is because the nature of destiny is to create reward and punishment for us. And no reward and punishment can be created if you are not responsible for the action. If you say that this choice was already made and written up somewhere, can you be punished or rewarded for it? Therefore, the whole law of karma goes down the drain if everything is predetermined. What are we talking about? Because if you cannot make a choice except what is predestined and predetermined, then the punishment and reward that has been predetermined, you are not really responsible for it. It was, you went on a predetermined course. Why are you being punished? Why is karma operating on you? The truth is, just like free will is illusion because we don't know the factors of choice, just because free will looks real because we don't know what choice we have made, karma is also illusion and only applies when we have no knowledge how free will works. Karma is not real either. Destiny itself is not real either. We go through it because we, being ignorant of the reality, we think this is real. So once we start adopting that this body, this mind we are working with is the only reality, and we are ignorant what's going to happen in the future, we can't see it, we are confronted with this. If we don't do anything, that's also a choice. If we do something, that's also a choice. If we do this or that, it's a choice. Can we get out of choice making? No, because we have no options, no knowledge. Supposing you are able to step up into another world where you can see this destiny, how it's working, and all laid out already, you will notice that the operation of free will, the making of choices, is part of the destiny. It's exactly written up how you make a choice. Not that you will, like that man told me, not only that you will put up number 3 and put up that name of a flower. He said, you thought I am going to fool this fellow and I'll put another number. He could even read the process in which I made a decision. So when we say that we experience free will, we experience the reality of free will because of lack of knowledge. Ignorance creates the experience of free will to be real. Ignorance of the reality makes us feel that the punishment and reward is real. Ignorance of the reality, of our own reality, shows that it's not predetermined. We have many possibilities, many choices, and therefore we can pick up any choice. If you can see, even once you have a glimpse within yourself and see your predetermined destiny, everything changes. You discover free will was merely a predestined process going through you. So this is something so interesting. The only way to be able to get a complete answer is to go above the mind. If you have one trip to your consciousness above the mind, the whole answer comes up that this was a mental game. The whole law of karma itself was illusion created along with free will, along with predetermination. Everything was one package. It was not that one thing was real and the other thing was not real. The whole thing is the same level of creation, same level of illusion. But we, through the process of illusion, have never created illusions. We have used illusion to create reality. This reality we are living in is our only reality. We are all sitting, I am talking to you. If I knew you are a dream world and not real, why would I waste my time talking to you? I think you are all real, I am real. Every one of you thinks the whole gang is real. Same thing we do in a dream. We go to sleep at night and we have a dream, we see 10 people. And one of them says, it's a dream. You say, how can it be a dream? Do you think it's a dream? You ask all the 10 people. They say, no, it's real. We think it's real. Then we wake up and discover not only we were dream creature, they were all dream creatures. We were trying to verify a dream from other dream creatures. How do we verify this reality? By checking with people of the same level of reality. There's no way to do it. You have to awaken to a higher reality to check if this was real or made up. So when you go to a level above the mind, you find the whole principle, the experience of free will, the experience of predetermined destiny was an illusion set up for an experience. State of higher consciousness helps more than any emotion can. State of higher consciousness helps more than any dieting can. State of consciousness can help more than any exercise can. State of consciousness can help more than any fitness program can for the body. Yes.
One question I remembered mine. If there is no decision that is either good nor bad, is how do
I
we
said yesterday these are all social values imposed on us by religion and society, and we had accepted them. And we have accepted them as if they were universal values for everybody, but they are not. They are all set up by society at different times, and what is good or bad keeps on changing. In different cultures it's already different. In different times in the same culture it's already different. There's a German philosopher, Immanuel Kant. Immanuel Kant wrote many treatises, and one of the treatises is a treatise on morality. And he says, first he defines the mind as merely an experience of three categories: time, space and causation. When you place your experience in time and space and say there's a cause and effect of everything, you create morality. Because in order for cause and effect to operate, there has to be good and bad to give you choices to make. And then you say, I want to make a good choice. So he says all these are categories of the mind. He says the mind creates these categories and you need a morality in order to have these experiences. And then all the laws of punishment and reward arise from morality. And morality can be different at all times. But you have to have a morality just to experience even free will. Because when free will is experienced, you have to say what is good, what is bad. How do you choose? How do you choose between two options? And we always have, this is a better option. We always have to decide what's a better course for us. Therefore, it's inevitable while you have the experience of free will, however illusory it might be, you have to have morality with it.
If you're truly living in your higher self, though, does the good and bad go away somehow?
Yes, they absolutely go away.
And then you just live your life on instinct and it's
Not
all
instinct, intuition.
Intuition.
The big difference
Oh.
between instinct and intuition. Instinct is programmed into us. Our heart is beating by instinct. Animals are all working continuously on instincts, which are pre-programmed. There is no consciousness involved in instinct. It's an instinctive reaction to things. whereas intuition gives you knowledge. When you live, you don't live by instinct, you live by intuition. If you live by instinct, you live an animal life. If you live by intuition, you live an awakened human being life.
So
The difference.
that plane.
Everything moves smoothly. Everything
It's
goes
just smooth.
smoothly because you're living in the will
Neither
that
good nor
prevails.
bad, just smooth.
Everything goes smoothly because you are not trying to make decisions, you live with the will that's prevailing. And then later on you find out, in any case you would have lived in that will, even if you are not fettered about with your mind.
Oh,
So higher life is much better. Okay?
I like that. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Okay. Yes.
What about doubt?
Doubt is a natural product of the mind. Just like different things we have, like a body, and we have a thinking mind, so long as the mind is thinking, the thinking of the mind is the same thing like the heartbeat of the body. If the heart stops, the body falls apart, dies. If the mind stops thinking, it dies. So mind has to think. As part of the thinking mechanism, thinking function of the mind, doubt is automatically arising. It's a function of the mind to create doubt. And the reason why the mind is supposed to create doubt is to obtain certainty. If you have no doubt, how will you get certainty of anything? If you have no skepticism, you'll never get any certainty. So skepticism or doubt is not bad, so long as it leads to certainty. But if you live in doubt and never find certainty, then you are in trouble. Because if you do not find certainty, after having doubt, you go into a second level, which is fear. Doubt leads to fear if you don't go into certainty. So from doubt and skepticism, you can either move to certainty by discovering certainty because you had doubt, or you go into fear and go down the road. Fear then is like a spiral that keeps you going down. So doubt is a natural function of the mind.